Hello and welcome to Clay to Canopy, the show where I attempt to make just about everything from the ground up. In this video, I'm going to be baking up some pumpkin and mushroom croquettes. So come on, let's do this. This dish is another kitchen experiment, and this could be done with leftover Thanksgiving food, but I'm going to be doing this completely from scratch because it could also be used as an appetizer for Thanksgiving. What I'm going to be doing is stuffing some mushrooms as if it were a little bite of Thanksgiving all in one. So I'm going to be stuffing these mushrooms with a green bean casserole filling in the bottom, and then I'm going to be topping it with some mashed pumpkin potato mix on top, and I'm going to be making a gravy with a bit of caramelized onion, mushrooms, and some cream. So kind of like the cream of mushroom filling you would make your green bean casserole with. The ingredients I'm going to be using for this dish is medium whole mushrooms on the larger side, as I want a good hearty stuffing, and when you stuff these, they will shrink once they go into the oven. I also have some green beans, a russet potato, pumpkins, onion. You can use any type of onion. I just happen to have red onion laying around. I usually don't use red onion, but it offers a different layer of flavor. I will also be using some stock throughout this recipe, whole milk, some butter, and then some spices to season. So I'm starting off by making myself some mashed potatoes, and I have my russet potato. I diced it up into about half-inch diced cubes, and I'm adding in some salt, and this is just a pot full of water boiling away, and I'm going to boil this for about 10 minutes until when I stick a fork in, the potato is cooked. So if you're using leftover Thanksgiving items, you could just take your regular mashed potatoes that you have already made, and I'm going to be adding in some pureed pumpkin just to give it another layer of flavor and to make this more of a pumpkin forward dish. But you could totally do this with just your plain mashed potatoes. My potatoes are ready, and I have a masher. I'm just going to go ahead and mash them up a bit first. Then I'm going to be adding a little bit of butter, about a tablespoon of butter I'm going to add to this, and then see where I am on what it looks like. Now I also am going to be adding a splash of milk. I don't want these too loose because I'm going to be adding in the pumpkin puree. This is maybe 2 tablespoons of butter to this one russet potato. If you're using leftover mashed potatoes, they probably have thickened a little bit, but because I'm doing this fresh, I don't want them too loose. So I'm just going to put a splash of milk. Maybe that's like probably a tablespoon. I'm a more butter to milk ratio in my potatoes. And then you're going to want to make sure you add some salt in. Potatoes like to suck up a lot of salt, so that's why I salted them as I boiled, but also why I'm salting as I go. And I'm going to give it a taste. A little bit more salt, only because this pumpkin that I'm about to dump in, it's just pureed pumpkin. This is already pre-cooked boiled pumpkin. I just kind of threw this into my blender and pureed it. And this is about 3/4 of a cup of that puree. So here we go. Since I am making these green beans from scratch, I like to cook off my green beans a bit just to remove any of the moisture. If you're using your leftovers, then you just need to cut up your green bean casserole into smaller chunks for stuffing in the mushrooms. Cut these into about a 1/2-inch little bits, and this is fresh green beans. I'm going to be adding a tiny bit of butter to my pan. I'm going to just saute them in a little bit of butter and remove some of the water. While these are cooking off, I want to show you how I prepped my mushrooms. I like to open up my mushrooms a little bit before I stuff them. So I'm going to I left one unprepped. I'm taking just a paring knife, and I'm going to come in at an angle and give myself like a 45-degree cut here all around, opening her up. And then I can give my stem a little wiggle, and she's nice and clean. And then I have also diced up my stems really tiny, about maybe 1/4 of an inch diced and set those aside. I also have onion diced up 1/4 of an inch that I'm going to be working with as well. I'm going to add a tiny bit of salt, bring out that water. The salt will help your veggies sweat. I don't want to overcook them because these are going in the oven. I just want to sort of dry them out a little bit. Grab myself a couple cloves of garlic. They are frozen from the garden. These are homegrown garlic cloves that peeled and threw in a jar and threw in my freezer. I'm liking that color. Yeah. Alright, I'm going to just saute this for a minute, draw out that aroma from the garlic, and then I'm going to set this aside. Alright, I'm going to add a little bit more butter back to my pan, and I'm going to add in my onion. Add a bit of salt. And now I'm going to add in mushrooms, the stems of those mushrooms. And I am going to saute this down till my onions are translucent and my mushrooms are pretty shriveled up. I got this fairly cooked down, and to it I'm adding in some stock. I got about a 1/2 cup of some veggie stock that I'm adding. This is basically how I make my green bean casserole. I make a cream of mushroom from scratch, and then I use that to bake off my green beans. Give me a little bit of a boil here. I'm going to add in some beer. Normally I use a red wine like a Merlot. I don't have any. I did notice I have a stout beer. This is when I was in my I'm building a dragon. I bought myself some dragon milk, dragon beer. It is a bourbon barreled white stout, so it should, yeah, have a little bit of that. Add a little bit. I think I'm going to put in about 1/4 of the beer. The milk is going to go in last to add as my cream. Prior to doing that, I am going to puree this. We're just kind of getting all those flavors in from the pan, cooking off some of that alcohol. Smells awesome. Adding that stout to the mushroom really enhances it. I'm a big proponent of adding some type of alcohol when you are working with mushrooms. It is the layer, especially if you are a non-meat eater. Any of the like beef dishes, I use a lot of mushroom to sub out the beef. And in order to really retain the flavor of those roasts or whatever that dish is, adding a wine or even the beer in this case really pulls out that flavor and makes the mushroom kind of bodied and take on a little bit more of that hearty feel. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and finish this off, get this pureed into my blender, and I will return with it on the saucepan and ready to add in our milk. This sauce, it tastes absolutely amazing. Before I add any cream, I'm going to use the cream sauce as a topping sauce to go over mushrooms, but before I do that, I'm just going to take some of this sauce and mix it into my green beans for stuffing. So this part's going to get stuffed. So I'm going to go ahead and get this back on the heat and add in some milk to make this more of a cream sauce that will go in, and basically what this is going to do is become the sauce I drizzle on top of my mushrooms. Suppose if you were doing this like for party's sake, you could serve this sauce on the side. And honestly, this is so rich and creamy that you didn't really need the layer of the milk if you're trying to do this vegan. I did add butter, but you could swap out for some vegan butter. The butter is helpful at thickening your sauces and cooking off the veggies. It adds another layer of flavor. So I'm just going to set this aside because we're done with this for now. We are ready to roll with assembly. I have some breadcrumbs. I'm going to add some breadcrumbs to this little dish. I have a pan heating to my left, and then I have my potato pumpkin mash, my green beans, and my mushrooms ready to go. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I am going to fill up my mushroom with a bit of green bean, top it with my mash, breadcrumb it up, got my pan going, a little bit of cooking spray. Usually I have firmer mash than this. This mash is not so firm. Okay, we're gonna have to do the sprinkle method, and then I'm gonna take this and dump it face down onto my pan. So I'm going to do this process, and I think I liked the sprinkle the mash on top a little bit better. My baking sheet next to me, I covered my baking sheet in some aluminum foil and then sprayed the foil with some cooking spray, and I have preheated my oven at 400 degrees. I'm just trying to get some color on the mash, and then it's going to get transferred onto this baking sheet and go into the oven for its final cook. It works much better when the mashed potatoes are a little firmer, meaning they're a little bit older, a little bit more dried out. You know that adding the pumpkin has softened it a bit. And that's what it looks like with some color on it, and it'll go into the oven like that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these off, get them in the oven. Probably going to cook them for about 15 to 20 minutes until my mushroom is fully cooked. All right, y'all, here they are. My pumpkin mushroom croquettes are done, and it is time for a taste test. Let's see how these bad boys turned out. All righty, I'm going to cut this open. Oh, look at that. It looks so good inside. Looks so good inside. I have been tasting as I go along, and this sauce, let me tell you, that beer was such a good addition. It's like Thanksgiving in one bite. One bite. You know, you could totally add stuffing to this if you wanted to add some stuffing to the top or into the middle of the mix with those green beans. But since I already had the pumpkin and mashed potato going on the top, I thought it might have been just a little too much carbs for me. But you certainly could add in that leftover stuffing. This is a really good one. I'm gonna polish this off because I'm hungry and this is good lunch. Until we meet again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you have not done so already, and stick around for more cooking to come.